Perfect. Okay. All right. So until so far, we have taken two use cases specifically for web scraping. One using uh, native Python libraries like Request and Beautiful Soup. We scrapped IMDb website. We did some API scrapping also. Through GET request, we got some information. Then in one scenario, we uh, tried to scrape data from an API website, which was a closed API site, which included use of some API keys. So that scenario is also we have taken. Then we moved to using enterprise level framework used for web scraping, and that is called as Scrapy. So using Scrapy, we started of scraping you can say a site which is quotes to scrape.com. This site is basically not that complex, and I mean purposefully taken that site because right now the focus at this point is understanding Scrapy and its functionalities. After that, there will be some more complex site which will include dynamic web elements, JavaScript usage, and all. So at that point in time, we will be more focused on, you can say, complex website. So this is like a long 60 hours duration course. We have a lot of time on dealing with complex application. The initial sessions are more oriented on understanding the tools, technologies, and concepts. So I'll resume where I left last week. So we were discussing about Scrapy, and I think you can see my screen. So I'm on my drawing dashboard, and just give me a minute. There's something wrong with my drawing dashboard. Let me see. What's the problem? Okay, so it needs to be like this. Okay. All right. So last week we started with Scrapy, and when we were discussing with Scrapy, we understood that there are certain components within the Scrapy framework. Uh, these components involve using like it's a very similar approach to Django. If you have used Django, then you would find a lot of similarity related with Scrapy. Someone please tell me how to close this ribbon. This makes me irritate a lot every time. And that's why I don't like Zoom at all, to be honest. I mean, I would always prefer Teams over Zoom. Uh, but someone, if no, someone knows how to minimize this ribbon, please let me know, okay? Because now it's good. So we are, yeah, I was looking out for a layout. Hmm. So in Scrapy, which is a Python web scraping framework, we have couple of components. Last time we discussed, just a quick recap in next 5 minutes. We need to know what is Spider. Okay, So spider is basically your script that will perform your scraping, that will have your scraping logic. So that's called a spider. And then the second thing is you have to configure certain settings inside the settings.py file. And those settings are related to, let's say, robots.txt. If you want to follow the rules written in the website robots.txt, or you don't want to follow the rules, you can set it as true or false. You can set concurrent request to 16, 32. You can increase as well depending upon your requirements. You can define middleware pipelines as per your requirements. So I'm not going into what is middleware and what is pipeline. I explained earlier in the session, and I'll explain again when we will be actually dealing with it. So that's all is present in settings.py. Many other settings are there. Let's say settings related to auto download delay, wherein between two consecutive requests, how much delay there should be, or you can set it to 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, and so on. So that's present in settings.py. The next is items.py. Today we will discuss about items.py, what exactly it is. So this is basically your temporary storage location. So it will store some kind of data that we have scraped. So it is used for temporary storage location. Then we will discuss about pipelines.py. What is pipelines.py? Pipelines.py basically will have some logic. uh, let's say this logic can be something which is not present by default in Scrapy. Like Scrapy is used for scraping data, but what we will do with scrape data? Let's say you want to store it in MongoDB. So if you want to store in MongoDB, then that logic will be written in pipelines.py. Or let's say if you want to work with some kind of data pre-processing operations, like whatever data you have scraped that's not in the right format, you want to make it in the right format. So whatever data transformation, data pre-processing logic you will write, you might write it in pipelines.py. Then there is middleware.py, which will also give us some additional functionality, but today we'll not discuss about it. We will keep it for some another day. Middleware.py. So these are some of the important components inside our Scrapy framework: Spider, settings, items, pipelines, middleware. Along with that, we also should understand that Scrapy is capable of scraping. Scraping means what? Getting the data from the web, fetching the data from the web. Plus, it is also capable of crawling. Crawling means navigating from one link to another link. So you can define logic inside Scrapy, inside your spider, that can crawl or move from one link to another link and then perform some whatever operations you define, either scraping or anything else. So these are the basic functionalities related to Scrapy framework. Um, Normally, for any application which requires a lot of work to be done, we should always prefer such frameworks. If the target application is simple, it has less components, less web pages to scrape, then you can use Beautiful Soup, Request, and all other libraries. Okay, now so let's switch to the VS Code and see where exactly we were last time and what we have to do today. So this is my code spider project, and it was created in, let me see, uh, there are two folders open. I'm not sure which one is what. So let me close one of them and then we will see. And let's zoom out a bit. Okay. Clear the screen. Hmm. Okay, so this seems to be the last, this seems to be the project that we created last time. If you see the codes demo folder, which I've created. So web scraper demos, this is my root folder. Inside this, I have done all the work so far. So IMDb scraping, we did it last time, was here itself. Scrapy demos, I've started over here, and we are scraping quotes demo. I mean, we are scraping that quotes website. If you do not recall what exactly it is, it was this one, quotes2scrape.com. And this is the site that we have started scraping for learning purpose. So how do I create this folder and all? If you recall, I basically executed some commands. So let's say I basically created Scrapy start project, and then I provided the name of the project. So I think I gave the name of the project as quotes underscore demo. So when I executed this on the terminal, it basically created a folder for me with the name quotes underscore demo with this scrapy.cfg file, config file. This is a config file, and this file basically has the location of your settings file. If you just open this on Notepad++, you will see that this scrapy.config file will have location of my settings file. You can see this folder and dot settings. Dot settings means settings.py file. And it also have, like, if you want to deploy this project onto a local server, then at 6800 port localhost, you can deploy this spider as well. Okay, I'll close this file. I'll close others as well, which we don't need, so as to reduce the clutter on my screen. And we'll go into the root of the project folder, which is codes demo. Now this is the root of your project folder. Here there are all the files: settings file, pipelines, middlewares, items. Init.py, we know that wherever it is present, all of the folder is treated as a Python package. Now here inside spiders folder, you have your spider, actual spider, which is codes underscore scrape.py. Here you have the logic of scraping the website, the web application. All right, so I'll move back one folder, and I hope these files are all clear. Let's switch back to VS Code. And in VS Codes, we'll open codes underscore scrape.py. And over here, we have our virtual environment activated. Looks like it's the same virtual environment. Let me check if I'm in the right virtual environment. Import sys.prefix. So it's pointing to C users admin web scraper demos venv. So I am in the right virtual environment. Okay. And hopefully I have the right Python exe as well. Web scraper demos, virtual environment, scripts, python.exe. Okay, that is also correctly set. Now, before moving ahead, I'll like to quickly run my spider so that I get to know where exactly I implemented, I mean, until what point we implemented. And then from there onwards, we'll start building the additional functionalities. So I hope you recall the command to run the spider. The important point to understand is that this terminal, command line terminal, should point to the root of the project where your scrapy.cfg file is present. Let me see. I have run the dir command, and you can see scrapy.cfg is present. So I can safely run the scrapy crawl command, and after crawl, I have to give the name of the spider. You can give the name of the spider from here. You can copy this, which is quotes underscore scrape, and then hit enter. Let's wait for the process to complete. As far as I remember, we basically tried to scrape last time these quotes, which on from the first page, and yeah, this quotes from the first page, and along with the author and with the tags, right? So these are the quotes, around 8, 10 quotes, I guess. the first page. And I also remember that there are total 11 pages on this website. Um, okay, we'll discuss more on that pages part later. But yes, these are the codes, author, tags that we tried to scrape. Let's see if we got that information. Looks like yes, we got that information. You can see that spider opened at this step. It crawled 0 pages at this step, and it sent a get request, and it got a response from this codes to scrape.com, which is success of 200 status code. Then it successfully scraped this site. Okay, perfect. And now this is the information that we got: codes, and then the codes, the author tags, and then the tags: change, deep thoughts, thinking, world. Quickly, let's check that if that's correct. Change, deep thoughts. Okay, so I think we are successfully able to get the scraped data from this first page. Now let's move ahead, and I think for all the quotes we are getting this. Perfect. Let's minimize this terminal window. So until this point, what I was doing is the logic to quote to scrape the quotes is present over here. This is the selector. The logic to scrape the author, this is the selector, and the logic to scrape the tags is present over here. There are a few more methods we discussed that other day, but and hence I have commented this, so no problem. Or in fact, I can remove this as well. No, not an issue. I'll try to make our code as clean as possible. Okay, and then what we are doing is we are trying to yield this information. When I say yield is very similar to return in Python, and it expects a dictionary. So we created a dummy dictionary wherein these are the keys and these are the values. All right, and that's what the format is. You can see the output is dictionary, right? Where quotes is the key, and then the actual quote is the value. Author is the key, and actual author is the value, and so on. So that's why we are getting this kind of output in the terminal because of this yield statement over here. Now, next thing is we will be focusing, as I said, today on this first topic, which is items.py. Okay. And we'll try to understand the significance of items.py. Like in the start of today's session, only I told you that this is a kind of your temporary storage location. So I'll try to explain what temporary storage location means and what purpose does it solve. So whenever you try to scrape some data in Scrapy, you can use the same code spider code script.py over here, same script over here, and you can then do all the data transformation operations here. If you want to save it into some database, you can do everything on this same Python file, right? There is no restrictions to it. Okay, just after the scraping logic, you can do everything over here. No one can stop you doing that. But then what is the purpose of framework, using modular approach of coding and all that, right? There should be some reason behind using Scrapy as a framework, because it should allow us to give us some modular approach to each and every component. Like each component and its functionality should be present in one Python file. Like pipelines.py has a functionality of doing some custom logic. Items.py should store some data. Codes underscore scrape should only scrape the data. That's all. So what we do is we try to basically whatever data that we try to scrape inside this codes underscore scrape.py, we try to store it temporarily into this items.py. But how? So we have to understand what attributes we are trying to scrape from the target website. Now, if you see the target website, we are trying to scrape the quotes, we are trying to scrape the author, and we are trying to scrape the tags. Correct? Now, these are the three attributes so far. Okay. Now, these three attributes, for these three attributes, we will try to create some custom fields inside the items.py. So if I open my items.py over here, you can see a default template defined over here. What it says is, firstly, I mean, it imports Scrapy. Secondly, it has created a class for me, a custom class, custom item class, and this item class inherits, sorry, not imports, inherits from Scrapy library and item class. So basically, this custom item class inherits from this base class. What it inherits basically all the functions, methods, and attributes from this base class. So this concept is basically inheritance, single level inheritance in Python. Now, below that, they have told us that you can define the fields for your items, and it looks something like this. Like name is, say, for example, your field, and you can define it as scrapy.field. So whatever you are trying to scrape, like I am scraping quotes. Okay, I am scraping quotes. So I'll say quotes is equals to scrapy.field. I am scraping tags. I'll say tags is equals to scrapy dot field. Whatever I am scraping, whatever attributes I'm scraping, I'll define it over here. So quotes, tags, and author. Okay, author is equals to scrapy dot field. Why I have to define it over here? Because this is the place wherein that data will be stored temporarily. So it needs to know, okay, where should quote should go inside the quotes, where tag should go inside the tags variable, where author should go inside the author variable, right? So I'm defining those fields over here which are actually getting scraped in my spider, which is quotes underscore scrape.py. Now these fields over here are basically defined inside your quotes demo item Python class, correct? So if you want to use these fields inside your spider, firstly, what you need to do, you need to import that file items.py. And how do I import any file inside another file? So I need to write the from keyword, from, then we are inside the spiders folder, right? So we need to go back one folder. So from items, import, what's the name of that class? Quotes demo item. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to import items.py file, and inside that I'm trying to import that custom class. Why I'm importing that custom class? So that the fields that I have defined over here, I can utilize it over here inside my spider. So that's why I have imported this. So I'll copy this, and then you can create an instance of this class over here, and you can create it within this function, which is a parse function. And let's call that instance as items. You can name it anything, doesn't matter. Now this items is an instance, or you can call it as an object created from this class. And this class contains your fields. So you can say items. Let me go to the bottom over here. You can say items. And what was the value over here we defined? I think it was quotes. So item quotes is equals to the actual quote that you scraped over here. So I'm copying it, assigning it over here. Then I'm saying items author is equals to the actual author that you have scraped. And likewise, items tags is the actual tags that you have scraped. Just you need to be very cautious that you exactly the same word should be mentioned. So quotes, author, tags. If you see quotes, author, tags. Perfect. And this is the data that you are scraping. Now, for a moment, just imagine if I comment this, I'm not yielding anything. That means I'm not returning any information back. But instead, whatever data got scraped at line number 25, 26, 28. I am assigning it to the quotes author tags attribute of items object. Now this items object is created from the quotes demo item class defined in the items.py. So actually what's happening is, if I mean it's very confusing, let me know, please. Actually what's happening is, whatever the information that your spider, so assume that this is your spider file, okay, this is your spider. Whatever information from this website, like author, um, quote, and tag that you got from this website, quotes2scrape.com, you are then sending it back to your items.py file. And within items.py file, you are sending it actually to that custom class, whatever the class name is, I don't recall right now, which I think is, yeah, quotes demo item. This class, it is quotes demo item.py. You are assigning it to the quotes, tags, and authors variable within it. So what will happen is, in each for loop, so when this for loop will run, then what will happen is it will get the quote author tag and it will assign it to this items object. Next time it will do the same. Third, fourth, 10 times it will do it. Why 10 times? Because there are, I guess, 10 quotes, right? So 10 times it will do it on that one page. And what you can do is, at the end, I mean, I want to see the result actually. Like, okay, it is sending to items, but how do I verify? So now you can yield items. You can yield items to see whether what exactly you get at the output terminal, right? So now if I clear the screen and try to run the crawler, the spider one more time, Scrapy crawl, and the name of that spider is quote scrape. Hit enter. The expectation should be that it will return us the same data, but this time it will give us the data which we have stored in items.py in a little different format. I'll show it to you which format it should give us the data. You can see it. It's giving us in a form of dictionary. So items becomes a dictionary. What we are yielding? We are yielding items. So items is a dictionary in which quotes, you can see this quotes is the key, and actual quote that has been script is this value in the list. Author is the key, author is the value, tags is the key, and these are the tags. You might say and argue as well, it's almost the same representation as we got earlier. And I will say, yes, absolutely. There is no much difference, but all of this will make sense when these items that you have temporarily stored inside this class will further be sent to pipelines.py for some additional logic of, let's say, storing it in a database. So we need a kind of a workflow. Okay, we need some kind of workflow wherein each Python file does a specific job. Quotes underscore scrape.py scrapes the data. Items.py temporarily stores the data. Sorry, pipelines.py performs some custom logic of storing that data, and so on. Am I making sense over here? Any questions so far? Hmm? No questions? I hope you're getting the point and reason why we are following this approach. Okay. Mm, why it's storing data as a list? Why it's storing data as a list? Because see over here, we have not defined it that inside the items.py, when I say quotes is equals to Scrapy field, okay, we have not defined over here that this quotes should be of the list type. It inherits this attribute from Scrapy.item, and hence, and over there it's defined as a list data type. So that's the reason of it being displayed as a list. After items.py, it's going for pipeline. That is something that I've said for the time being. Okay. To explain you the workflow, like, okay, after items.py, it should go or it might go to the pipelines.py based on your requirement of scraping. But let's say if your requirement of scraping is not storing it into a database, then there is no need to send it to pipelines.py, or there is no need to use pipelines.py. Okay, you can just use items.py for temporary storage, and then you might, let's say, store it in some CSV and Excel files. That is also fine. I just explained you time being that it could be done. Okay, thanks for confirming. I hope you also got this answer of storing data as a list. We didn't define it as a list. It got automatically defined because it was, this field is created. This variable got created from this from this specific Scrapy.field class, and this was defined as a list data type in the original Scrapy library. Okay, perfect. Now let's move ahead. In fact, let's discuss that point while I was explaining it, like why this pipelines.py is needed or not. Let's say my requirement is not to store anything in pipelines.py, but instead my requirement is very simple: get the data, scrape the data, whatever we get it, let's store it in some static file. So how we do that? How we can store the data in CSV file? So the process is very simple. And before jumping on directly to the process and giving you the answer, let me show you one thing. So today is voting day in Pune. So I will go for a vote. So Scrapy documentation, Scrapy documentation in Python. And here I would like to say export, let's say export CSV example. Items exporter class. We'll open this items exporter class. Okay, what they have done is they have basically defined it in a very programmatic approach, but I would like to give you a very simple approach instead of complex script writing and all this. And it should be there in the documentation, but it's just that I'll take some time to find it. So the process is like, if you want to if you want to save your data, scrape data inside your static files like CSV, JSON, XML, all you need to do is use the command line approach. Scrapy crawl, name of your spider, which is, I keep on forgetting, quotes underscore scrape. So until this point, we are telling the spider to scrape the website. After this, use a parameter called as O, which means output parameter, and then define the name of the file. Like, okay, you want to save it inside items.csv format. Okay, so I am expecting inside the quotes demo folder, there should be a file called items.csv generated after all this scraping is completed by this spider. -O stands for output. Let's run this. Okay, looks like this information we are getting because of the yield items. We got items.csv, and here you can see we got all the information in a comma separated value format, wherein the first thing is author, second thing is code, third element is tags. Okay, tags are in a single string, which is fine. Okay, this is what we need, because if I convert this into list later, I should get this as first element, this should be treated my second element, and then this should be my third element. All right, so I hope you got how we can export this inside a CSV file. Now, very similarly, what you can do is you can export it into uh, JSON file as well. So all you need to do is just change the name of this extension, make it as JSON, items.json. You have a JSON file over here. Let's open this, and oops, sorry. You can see you get a JSON file. And if you want to export it to some extensible markup language, you can do it through XML as well. Just change the extension. All you need to know is usage of the parameter -o. And like -o, there are other parameters also you can use in Scrapy. So Scrapy crawl parameters, Scrapy crawl parameters, and I'm command line tool. This is what I was actually looking at the first place earlier in my initial search. Command line tool, and here you will get all the parameters that you could possibly use along with the Scrapy command. Like Scrapy start project, my project is something which is very basic, right? To create a project. To create a spider, you can use Scrapy gen spider, provide the domain that you want to scrape. No, sorry, my bad. Scrapy gen spider, provide the name of the spider, and then the website that you want to scrape. Okay. Then there are other commands. This is the generic syntax. Scrapy, provide the name of the command. And if you want to know the help of that command, you can do -h. Like let's say I don't know about the crawl command. Okay, what exactly it does. So how to figure out the help for that? Scrapy crawl -h. So it will give me the understanding or description about the crawl command. The good thing about Scrapy is you can define log files also, which we have not yet discussed, but I'll discuss it in some time. How you can efficiently use log files so that it will give you a better visibility of what is getting scraped, which websites are getting crawled, um, which websites are getting excluded also. Because see, not always when you start a spider, okay, on a website, you would try to scrape the data from that website, but then it should also go to the next page and then keep on going to the nested links. But let's say inside your website, there are some third party links. You're getting my point? Like you are scraping flipkart.com, but in flipkart.com, there are certain links related to Instagram, and you don't want to scrape Instagram. So you have to provide that exclusion inside the spider, and to verify whether they are getting excluded, logs are the best place to perform that analysis. So we'll see the logs functionality a little later. But what I'm trying to say is the usage of these commands, Scrapy crawl -h. In fact, just to understand how Scrapy command works, you can just write Scrapy -h, and it will give you the parameters that you can use with Scrapy. So crawl is the one that we normally use. You use gen spider to create the spider. You use Scrapy list. Let's say I have 10 spiders. Right now I have only one spider, right? But you can create 10 or 20 as per your requirements, as many number of spiders. To get all those lists, what you have to do is Scrapy list will give you all the available spiders which are present. I have only one spider right now, which the name quotes underscore scrape. Does anyone recall what is view? I have already explained the significance of view, what it does. I mean, this is what I can see over here, but actual significance of, if I did Scrapy view, okay, Scrapy view over here, I am expecting that the website should open in a browser. Just a second, Scrapy, what was the command I wrote? Scrapy view, and options I have to give the URL, right? So I have not provided the URL. Fetch a URL using the Scrapy downloader and show its contents in the browser. So you can basically write Scrapy view and then provide the name of the URL, which in this case will be coach2scrape.com. But what's the purpose of that is what I am interested to know. If you recall, I think we have discussed this, isn't it? You can see Scrapy view, the spider has started. Anyone? And see, it has launched the website, but which one? A local copy. This is a local copy. You can see the HTML web page of the home page of this website. So yeah, anyone recalls what is the significance of this? Okay, I'll explain it one more time. And this is very, very super important. Reason being, actual websites will have a lot of dynamic web elements, JavaScript and all, and you won't be able to get the selectors for those elements. Like the other day, someone was had a question related to their website that they were trying to scrape. On Friday itself, I guess that was this question, and I suggested them to use Selenium to at least get the selector of that element because it was a dynamic web element, right? So if you want to get to know that your target website is having dynamic web elements or not, JavaScript elements or Ajax calls, if it has, then the better way is to perform this approach of Scrapy view and this URL. Because here itself, you'll get to know if some element doesn't get loaded over here. Let's say there was one another element which is right now not loaded over here, but in the actual website, if you visit, is present, then you can understand it is coming from an external script. And now you can define that logic needed inside your spider to scrape that specific element. So this approach helps us to know beforehand how many and what elements inside your DOM are coming dynamically from some external scripts or external calls. Are we getting this example? Are we able to understand this? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for confirming. So you can use Scrapy view as well. So all of a sudden, actually, the reason why I shifted from the what I was discussing before to these commands is because these are super important commands, and we should know their significance. There are many other commands. I would leave some of them for your self-study as well, but I'm trying to cover as much as possible. So Scrapy view, Scrapy crawl, all of this, you can use it. All right, let's move to the next part. We have basically stored all of our data into static files, into CSV files, JSON files, XML files, and all. The next thing that we would see probably in today's session would be how to store data in some databases like MongoDB or SQLite 3. We'll start with simple ones. SQLite 3 will start. We'll then try to do it with, let me see which database I have before committing anything to you. Let me see. I have whether I have MySQL. Yes, I have. So we'll do it with MySQL. Whether I have MongoDB. Yes, I have MongoDB. So we'll do it with MongoDB and SQLite. So I think I mean it's you can create it at runtime. So no issues with that. So we'll try to do all three of them. It will give you a better understanding of how to store the data in multiple databases, both SQL and NoSQL. But before that, If you remember, I said one point to you that storing into the databases and that logic of storing should be placed into some file. And what was the name of that file which will have that logic? Pipelines.py. It is meant to store some logic which is not present in your Spider, right? So pipelines.py will have all of that external custom logic that you would like to implement to perform any other tasks other than scraping business, right? So now items.py is basically storing your data temporarily in this class and within its within this variables, quotes or tags and author. And from here, I have to pass it to pipelines.py. Now, what happens in pipelines.py? We have to understand this. Now, inside pipelines.py, if you see, there is this custom class which is created. I have not created it. It is created by default when you created this project. Okay, at the time itself, this pipelines.py custom class was created. And what's there within this? It says that it has a function called as process item. It expects 3 arguments: self, because it's within the class, hence self is the first argument. Second is item, and third is spider. Out of this, both of them is really very important, but I'll explain this item. What exactly this item attribute, or sorry, item argument means. So inside your main spider, when you are scraping the web application through the selectors, you are storing that information in a variable. These variables are then later assigned to the items object over here, and then we are returning those items object. The moment we return this items object, it actually calls the pipelines.py class and executes the process item function. Are you getting this? I'll explain one more time. Whatever scraping activity you have done inside the quotes_scrape.py, once you have stored the information inside the object of the items.py class, and when you do yield items, which means you are returning those items, at that time behind the scenes, this logic is implemented behind the scenes. It will give a call to the class defined in pipelines.py, and within which it will execute the process item. And here you will write the logic, what you want to do with that item. So that items, this specific object over here is nothing but this argument inside the process_item class. Now I can do anything with this item object. I can store it in the database. I can do some data transformation over here, can do etc, etc. But all I do it is on this items object, because it will, that items object is returned to this item argument over here. And now within, after line number 13, I can write all the logic that I want to perform on this item object, which means the actual script data of quotes, tags, and author. Are you able to understand, guys? Am I making things clear, or is it getting messier? Okay, thanks for confirming. Okay. But I want to demonstrate what I've said to you. I mean, this is what I've said. So, but don't trust me at all. Okay. I mean, don't trust anyone at all without proofs. That's the fact of today's society wherein we live in, right? So you need to see the proof, then validate, and then absorb it, right? So whatever I've told you, I should explain it to you with some proof that, okay, this is how it happens. So what we can do is, mm, over here until this point, we are fine. We are yielding items. Now this should give a call to this class and the function within this class. So let me just write a simple print statement over here. Print pipelines, just something, I mean, randomly I'm writing anything, don't mind, please. And over here, I would just like to print this item also. Let's see. And yeah, that's all. So I'm saving this file, and here I'll keep everything as it is, no problem. Let's run this. If everything is as I explained to you, what should happen is it should yield items from here. That means it will give us that dictionary format of author, quotes, tags. Okay, but after that, it should give a call to this function, and then it should print pipeline, and again it should print that item, and it should happen for 10 times, because this yield item is inside this for loop, and it will run 10 times for 10 quotes. Perfect. So let's run this. Scrapy for quotes scrape. Okay, it's done. Execution is completed. Let's move up to the beginning. All right. Now from here, you can see it got a successful 200 response for scraping this page, which is present in start URLs. And now pipelines, and then this is the item which is present inside this. You see this, I have written pipelines comma item, right? Pipelines comma item. So now I am getting pipelines hyphen hyphen item. Okay. Likewise, you can see this output is not from pipelines, but it is from the yield, which is present in the quotes underscore scrape.py. This guy over here, yield items, this output. Now, next thing, second iteration, I mean, second iteration of the for loop. This is coming from the pipelines.py. This is coming from yield items. This from the actual spider. So on and so forth. So whatever I said, this simple line, which basically is trying to return items, but where it basically returns to pipelines.py, and here it will give a call to process item function. Here we are printing it, and we are returning that item. Now, what's the use of all this? Now, I hope, I mean, the concept is clear, but how we can utilize um, for our use case is something that we will try to discuss. See, when we have a scenario wherein we have to store the scraped data into the database, my expectation would be that every time this for loop runs, which for loop? This for loop inside this spider runs, it should scrape the data and store it into the database. That should be my expectation, and it should happen every time. So this pipelines.py helps me in achieving that. So ideally, my storing into the database logic should be defined inside the process item function over here, because it will keep on running every time, right? So here, I'll try to write that logic of storing it into the database. Now let me start with a very simple database, which is SQLite 3. We'll start with simple database. We'll then move to complex like MySQL, and then later finally we'll try to implement this MongoDB. Okay. So over here, um, okay, let it be as it is. Before starting to SQLite, let me just first give some very basic understanding of SQLite. Some of you might have worked on it, some of you might have not worked on it, but just give me an understanding. How many of you have worked with Python SQLite, not SQLite simply, but Python integration with SQLite? Just give me a moment. Someone is there on the door. I need to open it. But meanwhile, please share it in the chat window. Not worked on all of them by using Python. Not worked. Okay, no problem. So we'll try to first integrate SQL with Python and try to understand it. So just forget all of this Scrapy and all web scraping for just time being. What I'll do is I'll create a new file over here, okay, at the root folder, and let's name this file as um, database.py. Database.py. It has nothing to do with Scrapy right now. Whatever I'm doing is it has nothing to do with Scrapy, but it has to do with SQLite 3 and give you an understanding of how Python works with SQLite 3. What you need in Python to connect with SQLite 3 database. Okay, so SQLite 3 is a very lightweight version of SQL database. Okay, you can run SQL queries in it and create tables, add data inside it through SQL commands. But it's a very lightweight version. And secondly, it is present, it can be created on your local machine itself. So it is not that enterprise useful database that you can use for big projects. No, it is not used for that purpose. But yes, it can be used for small tasks, mini projects, home projects specifically. So, or if you want to store some local data on local preferences of some application on some user machine, then SQLite databases are ideal choices, because at that time you cannot install full blown version of SQL and MySQL and all. So SQLite will be used. So within this within this database.py file, what I'm trying to do is I want to import a library called as SQLite 3. So I'll say import SQLite 3 over here. You can see this library is present by default inside your Python environment. So it's not an external library. You can use it as it is directly. It's an internal library. Next thing is to create a SQLite database on your machine, you have to make use of this SQLite 3 library. So SQLite 3 has a function called as connect. And inside this connect function, all you need to do is give the database name. You can see over here, it's written as database. So I'll copy it over here. Or in fact, even if you don't copy it, you can just mention the name of the database. Let's say the name of my database is my quotes, and .db I have to give. .db means it's a database file. Okay, so my quotes.db. So when you run the line number 3, what will happen is this library will call the connect function, and within the connect function, it will say, okay, it is going to create a database file with the name my quotes. I'll create a variable for this. Let's create a variable for this. Let's say the variable name is connection, something like this. Okay, let me call it as connection. And then let's run this, just 2 lines of code, and see if the file is getting created or not. Where file should create? It should be created just besides database.py. Okay, let's run this. So here a file is created, mycodes.db, and this file is just blank file right now. It's not having any data for obvious reasons. So close this. So anyways, your file is created, no problem. But now you have to create a table inside this database file. And within that table, you have to send some data. But before creating a table, you need to connect to this database. And to connect to this database, all you need to do is this connection object that you got from here, it has a function called as cursor. And you have to get this cursor object. Let's call it as cur. This cursor object will be responsible for creating the table, adding the data, deleting the data, updating the data, all the CRUD operations that you can perform that can be done with the help of cursor object, this curr object that I have created over here. Now let's say I want to create the table. Then what I'll say is cursor, which means that variable called cur.execute, and here I'll write a SQL query. Now, if you have already worked with SQL queries, then you know what I would be writing over here. Since I'm creating a table, I'll simply say, I'll write a multi-line SQL query. So hence I'm creating 3 quotes over here. Multi-line SQL query means just in Python, if you write multi-line comment, all you need is 3 quotes at the start, 3 quotes at the end, so that you can write text in multiple lines. That's what I'm trying to do. The command that I want to use is create table, and a table name I have to give. So let's say the table name is quotes underscore TB for table. And that table should have, let's say 3 columns, a quote column, author, and a tag column. So you can provide it something like this. Let's say a quote column, comma, an author column, comma, a tag column, quote author tag. Yes. But important thing to know is that whenever you define any SQL table, that time you have to keep in mind what would be the data type of each of the column. You have to know it prior, and that's one of the disadvantage of SQL, that you should know which data type, what would be the data type of that individual column. So I should know quote should be of the text type, author should be of the text type again, and tag should be of the text type. So fortunately everything is text here, but let's say if anything was integer, I would have written number over here, or decimal or float if it was decimal data type. So anyways, you have basically created the syntax which will create a table with the name quotes underscore TB, and within which you will have 3 columns, quote of the text data type, author column of the text data type, and tag of the text data type. Perfect. I can write it in multiple lines. Let's write it in multiple lines so it is clear for all of you. Create table looks better. Now, let's say your table is created. Let's run this to see if the table is created or not. So my database file already exists. So if I run again it will try to create a my database file. So what will happen is it will check whether this DB file is present or not. If it is not present, it will create again. And then it will move ahead to create this table through cursor.execute command. Let's run this. And before that, in fact, just one important point before running this, what I'll do is I'll try to view this database file in some like viewer SQLite 3 database viewer online. So there are many tools which are available online through which you can view the tables within the SQLite database. So this is just one of them. I'll open the file. I'll go to, oh, this is not my folder. Yeah, this is the folder inside Scrapy demos. Inside this is the file 13.5.9.10. Right, what's the time? 9:15. Okay, 5 minutes back this was created. So I will open this file, and I know that there would not be any table at this point in time. Okay, so that's why it's showing table 0. No problem. Now once I run the script, which is this script, my expectation is a table should be created with these 3 columns. Let's run this. So there is no error. That means a table should be created. Let's go back to that SQLite 3 viewer. So what you can do is you can again open this file, my quotes, sorry, my quotes, and now you can see a table 1 is written over here, which has quotes of text. You can see ABC written over here. That means text. Author is also text and tag is also text. Okay, so table is created. But again, keep in mind, if I run this script one more time, it will give me an error because table already exists inside this database file. So now it will not create a table one more time. And now you can see table quotes underscore TB already exists. Hence there is an SQLite 3 operational error. Okay, so we have to keep this in mind because when we would be integrating this logic inside our pipelines.py file, we have to be cautious that for each execution within the for loop, when the data gets scraped, it will get stored in the table, but it should not create the table each time, because if it starts creating the table each time, you will get an operational error. Okay, more on that later, but right now we are focusing on SQLite 3 integration with Python. So now we have a table. Now let's add some data in the table. I'll just add, okay, I'll not do all the CRUD functionality, something you can explore at your end as well. So I'll just show you adding, because adding is relevant to our use case, because scrapped data will be added to our database. So I'll show you the add functionality, but let's say delete, update, you please try it your end and let me know if you have any queries. Okay, so add data in SQLite 3 DB, or let's say in this table, quotes DB table. Now, how to add? So again, cursor object is something that we'll be using. So cursor dot execute. Every time, whenever you have to add, delete, modify, update, create, you have to use a cursor object and execute function inside it. Now I'll write a SQL query. To add, we always use the insert command. Insert into name of the table, quotes underscore TB. And then you have to provide what you are going to insert. Then you have to use the keyword called as values. And then you have to provide which values you are trying to add inside it. So let's say the first thing that I want to add is Scrapy. I'm just adding anything. Scrapy is awesome. Something. Where it will go? It will go inside the quotes column. Author will be, let's say, Zeit. And let's say the tag is nothing but web scraping. So these 3 values will go inside the 3 columns: quote, author, tag. If I run this, let's run this, and just before running this, comment this section, because it will try to create the table, which will result in an error if the table already exists. So just run this one time and see if you get the output. There's some problem with the operational error, near value syntax. Let's see what's the issue. Insert into table values. Okay, it should be values, not value. Values. This is the first value, second value, third value. Quotes are completing, parenthesis is completed. Okay, let's run this one more time. Okay, there's no error. Looks like we are successfully sent the data. Now let's view it in SQLite 3 database. So here we have open file. Again, open this. And again, just a minute, open that file. 916, right? I don't know, for some reason this task manager setting is also giving me some issue. Just a minute, guys. I'll quickly change this task behavior automatically hide. Don't want to hide it. So anyways, I'm not able to see the task manager. Now it's visible. Okay. Anyways, I think I got the problem related to why we are not able to see the data. It's a very simple thing I missed, and sorry for that. We actually executed this command, but as per the SQL logic of commit and perform transactions, always when we write a SQL query, we have to commit as well, right? Then only the transaction will get completed. So the connection object that we have created over here, we will basically use the commit function within that to commit the SQL query, which means that, okay, you can create that table with those and insert those values. And then you also, as per best practice, should close the connection. Okay, so I'm using connection dot close. So here it will close the connection. Now, if you run this, it's done. Now you view it in SQLite. Open file, my codes DB, and here you can see Scrapy is awesome, author and tag. Now this information that I've given you in the last 15 minutes related to SQLite 3 integration with Python is necessary for in our use case, because whatever web script data that we'll get will directly transfer it to the SQLite 3 database using the same concept and same logic. Okay, so over here, I'll go back to my script, database.py, and then I'll go to pipelines.py. And as I explained to you earlier, this is the place wherein we'll write our logic of storing the data in database. Now, in let me mention it as a comment over here. This class contains logic to save data in SQLite 3 database. Now, why I am writing this over here is because I have 3 use cases, one with SQLite, one with MongoDB, and one with MySQL. And for each of these use cases, I'll create a different class. I'll not change this class. This class will be there for SQLite, another classes will be there for MongoDB and MySQL. And hence I'm explicitly mentioning this comment over here. Okay. Now, I'll remove this line because this was only for demonstration purpose. And here I'll try to add that logic to save data. But I'll write it in just a moment. Before that, every class has an init function, right? As per the concepts of object-oriented programming, We know that every class has an initialization function which gets called, and you can define some attributes over there which you want to be initialized at the start of that, at the execution of that class. So I'll create a function. I mean, not create a function, I'll just call that function init. And inside the init function, I'll say, I want to, whenever this class is called, when this class will be called, it will be called when it will be called, guys, when you will be yielding some item in the spider. You remember that, right? So when you will be yielding some items, yield items in this actual spider, that time this class will be called. As soon as this class is called, init function will be called. And as soon as the init function is called, I want to perform two tasks. First task should be creating a database, SQLite 3, creating an SQLite 3 database. So I'll say, I'll just mention the name of the function, self dot. Why self? Because I'm writing within the method over here. Okay, and self will reference to that object that I'll be creating. So self dot, let's say the name of the function is, I want to first create the connection. So create underscore connection. This is the function, and I'll tell you what this function does in just a moment. In fact, I'll write it over here. It will basically create the connection with SQLite 3 DB. Next thing, once the connection or the database file is created, next thing is create a table. So let me create a function called as create table. And what it does is it will create a table. Okay. So now we have defined this function over here within the init, but have we created this function? No. So let me write this functions over here, adding some extra lines. So def create connection, and the self would be the first keyword. I'll just mention pass over here, time being. What's the second function? Create table. So create a new function here, def create table and pass. So two functions are created, create connection and create table. So you have to mention the keyword called self over here, because you are defining these methods within the class. So guys, any problem related to oops concept, please let me know why we are writing self and why we have mentioned self over here. I am assuming you know these concepts. Okay. But if you have any question, please feel free to ask. So over here, these two functions, we have to write the logic within these two functions. And what I do is to cut short on time, because we have already implemented database.py. Here is the logic to create the connection. So line number 3 will create a connection to the database. I mean, it will create a database file. So I'll go back to pipelines.py, and as it is copy paste, this connection is equals to SQLite3 dot connect, and let's keep the file name mycoach.db, no problem. SQLite3 dot connect. And where is SQLite3? I need to import SQLite3 first, right? So let's import SQLite3 over here. Just give me a minute, guys. All right, guys, I'm back. Let's proceed. So what we were discussing was importing SQLite 3, right? We need to import SQLite 3 because we are creating a connection here with SQLite 3.connect with this database name. Let me delete this file. Okay. Once the connection is created, you know what is next. We have to create a cursor. So next step is connection dot cursor is equals to cursor, and always try to use self keyword over here because you're referencing an object within a class. So you can write self dot cursor. Okay. What happened? Why it's not referring? Is it not correct? Connection dot cursor. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, sorry, self dot connection, self dot connection dot cursor. So here we got the cursor object. Now once you got the cursor object, what you would do is create the table inside the table function, create table function. So here you would use self cursor self cursor dot execute. Within this, I'll just copy it now because I'll save some time. Uh, where is the database.py? And I have to create the table, right? So this is the table. I mean, this is the query that I would write over here within this to create the table. Correct. And quotes, author, and tags. These are the 3 columns. All right. Once the table is created, the next thing is to store the data in the table. So you can basically store the data in that table, and you can either use this process item. You can either use this process item, a function to store the data, or you can create your own function to store the data. Because anyways, what we are trying to do over here is we are trying to be as specific and as much as modular in terms of writing the code. Sorry. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to create function for each specific use case. So we'll try to create a function for storing the data as well. Instead of merging it into process item, what we'll do is we will say def store data, just another function, which will have a keyword called as self. But here, since it needs to store the data, it should get the data from somewhere. Which data? It should get the item. It should get the item, right? Which item we are referring to over here? That item which is passed on from the quotes underscore scrape.py. These items. So here I'll simply say item, and then here is the logic to add data inside table. So copy paste database.py. No, I mean the logic to add. So I'll copy this line, number 15. Oh, God, why this ribbon? Guys, can you see this ribbon coming up every time, or is it only me who face this challenge? Is this ribbon, the black ribbon, visible to you at the top of my screen? Yes. No, no, it's not visible.
No, sir.
Acha. Okay. Okay, no problem. Actually, at my side, this ribbon keeps on popping up every now and then, so I cannot click on any script the moment I want to. So no problem. I'll copy this 15th line, paste it inside the pipelines.py file, time being. And instead of cursor, it would be self.cursor. Now, all I need to do is, instead of this random stuff that I have added earlier for demonstration purpose, I'll pass the actual values. I'll pass the actual values. Okay. Just a minute, guys. I'll be back in just a minute. All right, guys, I'm back. Sorry for these inconveniences in the morning. A lot of stuff, maids and all. I hope you are trying to understand. It becomes a little difficult to manage everything. So Where were we? Insert into quotes. We are inserting into the table. We are inserting values in the table, but where are we gonna get these values from? Where are we gonna get these values from? From this place, yield items. Okay. And in fact, specifically, once these items are passed to pipelines.py, if you remember, I demonstrated using that print function and all. So we'll try to add values over here. But there is a specific format in which we'll get that data. I am not sure if that execution I had. So let me do one thing before adding any, because over here, see, I want to add values over here. So I need to write item over here. Okay. But inside item, I need to access the quote. I need to access the author and I need to access the tag. But how do I access it? I don't recall right now. What was the data type? Was it a list or was it a dictionary? I don't recall that. So what I can do at this point in time is I can comment, time being, all of this stuff, what I have written, time being. And as it is, what I did earlier was executed a print function, and here I wrote pipeline like this, and then I just mentioned item. That's all. I saved it and I'll run it. And now I'll check what exactly is the format of item that gets printed. Since I don't recall what exactly it was. So now I'll run it one more time. Scrapy call. Sorry, what's this? What's this? Not sure. So what I'll do is again, I'll do clear screen, Scrapy crawl, and name of the crawler, spider. Once you run this, we'll wait for the execution to complete. And I'll take any example. Let's say this pipeline. Okay, Steve Martin, pipeline hyphen hyphen author. So from here onwards, until here onwards, this is what I'm interested in. Okay, I'll copy it, save this in a notepad. Now this will help me to create my logic of adding the data inside the SQLite database. So it's a dictionary. Inside dictionary, you have to access the key over here. All right, no problem. So over here, I'll go back to my pipelines.py file, comment this specific line, uncomment all of this stuff, and over here inside values, I write for the first column. What's the first column? Quote text. So quote, inside quote text, quote will go your actual quotes. So item square bracket, and I'll access the quote, which means this key over here. Okay, so this is the first thing. And that too, it's a list, right? It's a quotes is a list. So inside this list, I don't want the list. I want to save it as a string inside my SQLite database. So the first element in the list. So it can be 0 or it can be -1. Anything you can write over here. So this is the first element that will go inside the quote column, comma. What's the next column? Author. And inside that, author should go. So I'll say item square bracket and author. Um, where is the author? This is the key for the author. And again, it's a list. So I'll say first element of that list. And then, comma, item square bracket, tags. And over here, I need all the tags, but without a list. Okay, now this is little not tricky, but we have to do some Python operation over here. Now tell me guys, if you have a list, if you have a Python list, then how you would convert it into a Python string, single string. If you go back to the join, absolutely. Thank you so much. Using join operation. So now we'll apply the same approach. If you go back to the Python, I'll open the Python interpreter over here. I'll just provide this list over here. Now on this list, I'll mention the join function. On this list, I'll providing the join function. Okay. And then, or no, sorry, sorry, my bad. Sorry. This is, let's say, for example, a string, and you want to separate each element with the quotes, and then you want to do dot join, and then within that you are passing this list, and here you get all right. So space join, okay, yeah. Yeah, you can give space as well. Perfect. For good visibility. Yeah, absolutely. I agree on your point. So you can give a space so that this looks better. So what I'm trying to say over here is, what I'm trying to say over here is use this operation, copy this, and try to apply it over here. So what we will be doing is item tags. So let's say dot join okay, item tags. Right. So now what we are trying to do is we insert the values, codes, author, and tags within that table that we have created in SQLite database. Now this store data, how and when it will be called? If you remember the point that I raised earlier, that whenever you perform the yield items over here, it will give a call to this class, and within which it will give a call to process item. It will give call to process item to you. So you have to explicitly mention this function that we have created over here, store data over here. So store data, and it expects what? An item argument, so that it can store it in the database. isn't it? All right. And this create table, create connection, these two functions are being called in the init function. So whenever this call is, whenever an instance is created from this class, the init function is called and it will execute these functions. Now there's a catch over here. See, there's a problem over here for which we can have to think about its workaround as well. That this scraper over here will run for 10 times. Every time it will scrape the data for quote, author, and tags. And the moment it does that, it has to basically initialize this function and then it has to create table. But if it creates table multiple times, like I've explained before as well, when I was explaining integration of Python with SQLite 3, I mentioned if you try to create table multiple times, it will give you an error. We have to add one statement over here saying that if the table exists, drop the table. If the table exists prior to this, drop that table. So simple, you have to use self.cursor.execute, and here you would write a SQL query. So we will just use drop table and provide the name of the table if exists, and provide the name of the table, which is, I think, quotes DB. What will happen is, if the table exists, it will drop the table, and then it will create the table with the columns, and then, as usual, it will add the values to it. Hopefully, we are good until this point, and only the execution will tell us if we are at the right direction. So now, just to verify if we have deleted the previous SQLite database. Yes, it's not there. So now what will happen is, this time when I execute this script, my expectation is it should create the SQLite database and it should add the quotes author tag for the first 10 quotes of that page into the SQLite DB. Then we will go to the viewer and verify if it's in place. Okay. Scrapy crawl quote scrape. Okay, the DB file is created. Let's wait. Okay, let's just quickly go to there's some error over here, which says self.cursor.execute insert into quotes table item this near quotes. Syntax error. It's saying some syntax error. Due to that, it's giving me some value. Anyways, it's trying to scrape the data because of the yield item. So let's verify what's the problem. Line number 40. No, not line number 40. Line number 33. Here is the problem. Insert into code into table values item quotes. And why I'm using this quotes? Because I saw the pipeline and this was the quotes. Okay. Item quotes and -1 because of that. Item author -1. This is also fine. Comma, what's this? I think accidentally I have no, it's join thing, right? Comma, this statement. Oh yeah. Dot join item tags this. Okay, the problem is I think this is not the right syntax. Insert into table values. This is good until this point. My bad. I'm really sorry. I mixed my SQL syntax with this little bit of SQLite. Okay, no problem. I'll comment this time being so as to understand what went wrong. Until this point is good as self.cursor.execute and getting the values. This is fine. I'll copy this over here, paste it over here. Self.cursor.execute and basically we are trying to send the values, but these values we are getting it dynamically, right? These values are dynamic, isn't it? So we will basically pass these values dynamically, and in SQLite we just write question mark over here for dynamic values. Okay, question mark and question mark, 3 values because code author tags, that's why. And then we will put this over here, and then this ending bracket over here. This is one thing, comma. Now here we will pass the actual value that we want to pass, which is nothing but this. So actual value is what? Item code 0 from here onwards until to say tag, until the tag. So item code -1, then I author this, I'll copy it and put it inside this. And the third thing is, the third value that we are trying to pass is this. Until this point, comma plus. Hopefully, this should resolve the issue. Insert into quotes table. Then the values we are passing dynamically, and these are the actual values that we are passing it over here inside this quotes table, quotes TB table. No problem. Let's delete this file from here. Delete, move to recycle. Let's run this one more time. Okay, it's finished. Let's see if there is error. No errors so far. So looks good. We have the database file created, but anyways, we cannot open it from here. So what we would be doing is we will go to viewer, open the file, and inside this, I am expecting quotes author tag, which is there, but it's not giving me the data because of my simple mistake, which is commit. I think I've not put the commit over there. So items, no, sorry, pipelines.py. Once you store the data, then you have to commit as well, right? After this. So serve.cursor. So basically not cursor, it should be the connection object that you created earlier. So serve.connection.commit. See, ideally, as per the best practice, once you commit the transaction, the best practice is you should close the connection also. We have not written any logic related to close, which is little bad practice. So let me do that as well. Here we are committing the transaction. Once the data is entered, there can be one more function that you create, and it's a predefined function, guys. So the name needs to be exactly same as it is. You cannot change the name over here. Close spider, because this is a function, this is a method inherited from Scrapy class. Okay, so now over here, if you see this close spider function, what you have to do is you have to perform all the actions that you want to do as a cleanup activity. Once the spider closes, you see, it should perform all the actions that you want it to perform as a cleanup tasks, like close the connections, close the cursor, and so on. So here I'll mention self dot cursor dot close, and I will say self dot connection dot close. All right. So it should close the cursor and close the connection. And here we are doing commit operation in the store data. Now this time, hopefully, we would be successful to get the data inside SQLite DB. Meanwhile, guys, any questions so far you have for any aspect of the topics that we have covered today? Before we jump on to the new topic, okay, now you can see that we have our data present in the database of SQLite 3. We have the codes, total 10 codes, yes, and authors for those 10 codes, and the tags for those 10 codes. Okay. Humor, obvious, smile. Hmm. All right, guys. Yeah. Any questions so far? Please ask if there is any query, doubt related to the points that we have covered so far. If there is no question, then I'll move ahead with the new implementation of MongoDB. Not MongoDB. Before MongoDB, I'll cover MySQL because we have done SQLite, so MySQL is a little bit relevant. Both are relational databases. So I'll try to cover MySQL and then I'll jump to MongoDB implementation. So for MySQL, most of the things that we have done so far will exactly be the same, but just I'll create a new class for this instead of changing this one. As I said, this class is containing the logic for SQLite 3 and new class, which is, let's say, store MySQL will contain the logic of storing the data in MySQL database. Okay, but before that, before you can say create anything in MySQL database, important thing is that you should install MySQL on your device. If you have not installed it so far, or this is the first time you will be installing it, then you can, see, MySQL installation is a little having a lot of, you can say, steps to install it. But trust me, it is most of the times you'll be using default steps. The only suggestion is when you create a root user account, remember the password of that root user account. That's what you have to do. Make a note of it because you will be needing that. You will be needing that to log into the MySQL instance. So once MySQL is installed, I'm not going to the MySQL installation procedure. You can refer any website out there on Google. You can download MySQL, it's open source, and install it on your Windows device. Meanwhile, I'll just mention pass over here. And now, once MySQL is installed, so you can go to the workbench or you can go to the command line interface. Let's go to the workbench. It will be a little easier to visualize. So here I'm at MySQL workbench. Click on the connection. If I remember the password myself, it's a lot of, there's a lot of gap. I have logged into MySQL. It should be. Uh, sorry guys. I need to recall my password myself. Okay, we are in. All right, so what you see over here is basically, I'll close all of the files that I might have opened earlier based on some training and all. So these are the previous instances. Don't save. Okay, so these are some pre-existing database. Some of them I have created it. So here we will be creating our own database, which will store our quotes data. All right, so the process is simple. Just go to the schemas, right click, create schema, define the name of the schema over here. You can name it same. So we'll keep it consistent over here. We'll say that same my quotes or something, right? My quotes is the name of the database. Now, all of this that I'm doing over here, you can do it programmatically also through Python. Okay, the way we created SQLite database, we didn't went ahead inside SQLite 3 and created it manually. Okay, so you can do this programmatically also. If you want to try it, please try it at your side. Let me know if you have some doubts. Just for the interest of time, I am creating the database over here, and then automatically I'll try to, through automation, I'll try to add the data inside that predefined database. But ideally, you can create the database through MySQL connector in Python. So my quotes is the table that I'm, database that I'm creating over here. Just click on apply, create schema my quotes, click on apply, click on finish. So should have my quotes over here. Okay, but as expected, there is no tables over here. So since we have not created any table, to create the table and everything, will basically look at that point now. All right. Um, mm, 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 mm. So I'm just trying to think out loud what different we can do over here. So let me do one thing. I'll try to. So let's say we have this table, my quotes table views. Okay, so let's do one thing. I'll go ahead and create that class over here, and in that class we'll connect to the database, and then we'll create a table. So the process would be exactly similar. We would be using the init function over here with self keyword, and then we will create self dot what we say, create table function, and then self dot create connection over here. All right, this would be our first function, init function. Next one would be to create a I'll instead copy this, all of this that we need. From here till here, we need exactly as it is. We need to make some changes because SQLite 3 and MySQL differs in syntax a little bit. So we'll have to make some changes here, but the construct of our program will be similar. Okay. Any questions so far, guys? Is there any questions that you have related to what we have covered so far? No questions? Okay. All right. So we'll move ahead and we'll try to implement all of this. So this connection, create connection is fine. And then we will need to create a table. This is also good. Okay. What's next, guys? What's next? We need store database also, right? Same thing, same stuff from here till here. Everything will be same. Copy this, paste it over here. Why is it giving error? Because of indentation, I guess. Hmm. Okay. Now, what things gonna get changed over here is, firstly, we are dealing with MySQL. So we need a MySQL connector. And before that, we have to verify whether we have MySQL connector installed in our virtual environment or not. I don't think we have it installed. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and try to install MySQL connector Python. This thing. Pip install MySQL connector Python. Copy this and install it in your virtual environment. So meanwhile, it's getting installed. There are many libraries out there to connect MySQL and Python. This is just one of them. Okay. Likewise, when we'll be dealing with MongoDB, there is PyMongo as one library, but there is Motar as another library. You can use any one of them to connect Mongo database with Python. All right. So now this MySQL connector client is installed. We would import MySQL connector here. Some reason why this underscore has come, I don't know. Just a second. MySQL underscore, instead of underscore, it should be MySQL dot connector. Import MySQL dot connector. Now this MySQL dot connector would be used to create the connection. If I scroll down over here, I in fact minimize this. It's no more needed for us. We'll directly go over here. So here self dot connection, instead of SQLite 3 dot connect and this, here we'll write MySQL dot connector dot connect, and now we will basically have to pass a connection string over here to connect to the MySQL instance. So it expects a couple of arguments. You can see over here, it's defined in the suggestions, star args, it's a variable length argument. Okay, that's what it is expecting, which means, or double star kwrgs, which means you define the keyword and then the value of that keyword argument. So let's use double star kwargs, which means I need to define the host. Host equals to where this instance of MySQL is present. Localhost, it's present on the base machine. Either you write 127.0.0.1, which is loopback IP address, or you write localhost. It's one and the same thing. Okay. Next, you have to define, I'll write it on the new line. You have to define the username. So user is equals to root. If you remember this connection string, let me exit and go back to, I shouldn't have exit actually. There was a logout also. So anyways, if you are at this page, you see over here, this is the user root. And once I click over here, I then have to provide the password as well. So over here, if I go back to my VS Code, I have to provide the username and then password, PASSWD. That's how I think it is mentioned in MySQL. And then you have to provide the password. So it is mysql@12. That's the password. And then the next thing I have to provide is, okay, localhost is done, user is done, password is done, and then the database that you want to connect with. So database is equals to, what was the database? MySQL. I forgot what I have defined over here. My quotes. This is the database I want to connect with. So here I have defined this connection string over here, and this is the connection object I got. Now, once this connection object is received, then I can use it over here in the cursor object. This cursor object will then be used to create the table. Okay, so again, like self.cursor.execute, I am checking if the table exists. So drop table if exist, and then I'll say which table inside this. So I'll say quotes underscore TB. Let's say this is a table that I'll be creating inside my database, my quotes. TB for quotes table. Okay. So drop table if exists, quotes table, and then I'll create a table, self.cursor.execute, create table, quotes table. Then I can define quote text, author text, and tag as text. This is also fine, or you can define varchar as well to define the data type of the columns. And then also define limit on varchar 255, 50, 100 based on the length of the string that you might anticipate in that specific column. I'll keep things simple and then just use text over here. So this is create table. Then I'll also use the store data. So this until this point is done, create connection is done. Above we have initialized. Now here we'll be storing the data inside our MySQL instance using the store data function, self item. Most of this will be the same, self.cursor.execute, insert into quotes, table values. Yes, here will be the change. We don't use question over here because this is the syntax in in SQLite. In MySQL, you use percent. Okay, so in MySQL, you use %s. So what we'll be doing is we'll be saying, I'm not able to click. Yeah. So %s comma %s comma %s. These are the dynamic values we are fetching from this section of the code. This would be same. Then finally we are doing a commit. Then this is a predefined function. We have not changed anything over here except we have added a store data function here. Okay. And then we are closing the spider. This is also a predefined function because you want to close the cursor and close the connection object to the database. Kind of cleanup activity. All right, now this is done. Now, there is one important point that we have to always remember. You have added two classes in your pipelines. I mean, one was already there. We modified it to store the SQLite 3 DB, to store the data in SQLite 3 DB. The another one is to store data in MySQL DB. But this one needs to be added to your pipelines, to your settings.py file, because if you remember in settings.py file, there is a, you can say in settings.py file, there is a section called as items pipeline, which defines which pipeline will run and with what priority it will run. So let's say MySQL I want to run with the priority of 299. As I said earlier as well, if not in the last session, but I'll mention it today, lower the value over here, higher is the priority. That means if I write 299, this pipeline will run ahead, or it will run first, and then code's demo pipeline will run. All right, so I'll copy this part from here to here. Okay, that's all you have to do. Now both of them will run, but this one will run first, this one will run second. Time being, I'll just, I mean, just for, okay, yeah, that doesn't matter. You can keep it, both of them, like enable both of them. Just make sure that, okay, this database DB is deleted. Okay, so now both of them will run, DB will be created, SQLite will also be created, and hopefully MySQL database table will also get populated if everything is correct. Okay, let's run this Scrapy crawl. Let's scrape. There seems to be an error. Store MySQL object has no attribute cursor. Let me quickly check. Inside the pipelines.py file, store MySQL class has no attribute cursor. So which line it is pointing to? Line 63. 63. Self.cursor.execute. Self.cursor.execute. So why is it saying so? We have created the init function within which we have these two things, create connection, create table and create connection. So ideally, just a second, I'll quickly create connection should come first, right? So I'll keep this first. Actually, the order is important here. And that's all, I guess. If you run one more time, and this time you say, okay, that SQLite hasn't even run because it was the priority is set to low. So it's being executed. Let's wait. Okay, now you can see SQLite database has executed. Okay, looks good. Hopefully we are getting everything perfect. Let's first see MySQL. So in MySQL, you have my quotes. Here you have table, you have quotes underscore TP. Let's see the first 1,000 rows. And excellent, you have the table. I'll just quickly um, hmm. So here you can see in the output over here, you are getting the table over here. Which is having the author tags and quote author tags. And 10, I think, quotes are there. Steve Martin. Yeah, this is the last one. So we are getting data in MySQL. That's fine. And we also got the data in SQLite 3 database, which is mycourse.db, which I think we have verified earlier. But if you want to see, we can see that again, which is, I think, SQLite 3 viewer. $10.28, yeah, recent one. And as usual, I mean, this was verified already, so I don't think there should be any challenge here. So we are good. I think we have saved the scrape data in two databases. Both were relational databases. And any questions, guys? No queries, no questions? Okay, if there's no questions, we'll connect back in 5 minutes. And then I'll give you a little assignment for today's session, which I would expect you to complete based on the topics we have covered today. So scraping is okay, but the expectation would be to cover, to get the scrape data on the relational databases like SQL and SQLite 3. So we'll connect in around 5 minutes, and then I'll give you that assignment, and then we'll wrap up the session for today. Okay, we'll connect back on around 10:30. Sorry, 10:30 is already there.